So I apologize about that for your own benefit. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. You are all being recorded right now, so welcome to YouTube. Welcome to Bootcamp Prep. So here's our agenda for tonight. We all see this, right? I can see you, so you can like head nod or thumbs up or whatever during a lecture. I'll tell you about me. We'll do an icebreaker. I tend to just come up with a new icebreaker every time I do this. You'll get a kind of overview of the course. It won't really do it justice, but we'll do it. And lecture is not really fair. I kind of talk about some code. I talk about tidy code today. That's what we call it. I talk about how to write code other people want to look at, because other people are going to be looking at your code over the next 4 weeks. So we're going to talk about what it takes to have code that doesn't make people angry. And that's kind of today for you. So I'm Eliot, crazy Polish last name. Do whatever you want with it. I don't care. I'm a software engineer at a company called Work Market. We're like Uber for people is the like really short elevator pitch version of this. There's a couple big names in the game. A lot of people know like the appy ones, like what's that one, Handy? People might be thinking about like Handy and stuff like that. We're a little more intense than that. We fulfill labor needs for customers like the New York Times and Walgreens, and you know, we do some crazy stuff. It's cool. I've been programming a long time. This is my 14th year being a programmer. I developed my first game when I was 13. I've done a lot. I also went to full stack. So if you're already like, this guy's been programming a long time, he's not a good example of what we should be expecting, you're wrong. I actually like stopped programming for a while and went back to full stack to kind of like freshen up my skills and learn a different type of programming. That's an email. This is being recorded, but you can write it down too if you want. What I tend to say about the email is that's kind of like emergency only. And that's not me saying don't contact me, but Slack is the best way to contact me about like most, like 99.99% of questions. I think if you're emailing me, you probably graduated this course and are like trying to like thank me or get angry at me or something, and you use that, or you need to send me something that's a little more serious, like someone antagonized you when you're in a breakout room. We'll talk about those in a little. You had like a terrifying experience with a class member, like they used an ism, like racism, ageism, something. Something like that probably deserves an email, but I'm telling you 99% of stuff, Slack is perfectly acceptable, and Slack is very cool. You should absolutely learn to use and love Slack. It's about all I want to say here. I do all sorts of engineering, so I would love to talk about basically any sort of engineering you guys like. I also, after full stack, I stayed at full stack for a little as a teacher. I left to do more cool stuff and ended up with this job, and now I teach this, solely this. But when I did teach there full time, I was a remote, there's actually like an immersive version of this remote thing we're doing. And I was the teacher on the first ever remote immersive. So I've been doing this like Zoom teaching thing for a long time. I'm very comfortable with it. I know all about it. We'll get better at it. You'll be astonished how much you will end up using this over the course of this. I think that's all I want to say. Yeah, you'll hear more about me as class goes on. I also saved the final day for like interviewing me and a fellow. I think there's a fellow in here. You get to antagonize one of them. They're like recently graduated full stack grads who are here to be kind of closer to your skill level, although obviously better than you. Hopefully you expect that from graduates. But they're meant to be kind of a closer line of communication. Like I graduated almost 2 years ago, so I'm pretty out of touch with the community in that regard. They're much closer to the kind of people that will actually be able to answer things in a meaningful way. I hear someone, but I don't see them.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
Okay. I muted you. Sorry, I'm mean like that. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We went way too far off. Yeah, let's do an icebreaker. This is a fine icebreaker. So here's what we're gonna do. I'll go first, but hopefully you have gallery view open at this point, which is that top right button for the third, fourth time. Sorry, everyone who's had to hear me repeat the same things over and over. It just happens. Hopefully you have gallery view open because it's gonna help you on this next part. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna say your name. You're going to say where you're from, what you do now, and then we're gonna say one weird habit, hobby, or interesting fact. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other and that gallery view thing works. So hopefully you see everyone. And what that allows you to do is you can see their names in the bottom left corner of this because we all don't really know each other's names. So after you go, you get to pick the next person who goes. Seem fair? There's always this awkward moment later in this, like after we've gotten through half of us, that somebody is going to not remember everyone who's gone. I'm sorry for you. So do your best to remember and actually listen. I'm Elliot. I am originally from Chicago. And one weird thing about me is my nickname at work is Squirtle for reasons that are unknown to me, but yes, the Pokemon. I think that's because I was seen as someone who does not care what people say to me, like hard shelled, and that I spilled water all over someone during a flip cup competition where I refused to drink beer. So I was squirting people with water during flip cup. And yes, startups are constant drinking at work. That's probably me. I'm going to pick. Let's go with Gabe. I'm going to pick Gabe. And I'm going to mute myself, and I'm just going to let this go wherever it's going to go.
Hey everyone, I'm Gabe. I'm currently a production editor for Scholastic. So I work on like kids' books pretty much all day. I've been interested in coding pretty much for a very long time, but I never thought of actually pursuing it or even trying it out until I had a few friends go through some boot camps recently, and they had a lot of successes, and it kind of got the gears turning, and I realized, oh, hey, maybe I can try it too. One weird fact about me, I guess, I'll piggyback off of Elliot's comment, is my nickname at work is Goob. I don't know why. I guess kind of because it sounds like Gabe, but yeah, I have no idea why. I'll pick Jacob next.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Good, cool. Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm originally from Huntington, Long Island, but I moved to city 2 years ago. And what do I do? I'm a research assistant at Measurement Incorporated. It's a education company. I evaluate school programs, try and improve them, or just tell them they suck and the government should not fund them anymore. One weird fact, it's hard to think of something weird because I probably don't think it's weird. Sometimes I break out into song first thing in the morning. Next up is a Metzler.
Hi guys, I think I'm unmuted. Originally I'm from Kazakhstan. That's a country in Central Asia on the south of Russia. I am full-time stay-at-home mom, formerly bartender, formerly teacher of Russian language and literature, formerly sales person. So I did a whole bunch of things during my lifetime, short lifetime. But yes, funny fact about me is that I am the most terrible person in the world before I get my third cup of coffee. Yeah. I gonna pick Matthew Sternwis. Sternwise, sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I get it all the time. It's Sternweiss, yes. Hi, my name's Matt. I just finished my degree in construction management, and I decided to do what I always wanted to do, programming. I currently don't have a job. My wife's in the military, and I lost my job in a relocation. So I guess this is a perfect time to do it. Funny quirk, I can't stop tapping my fingers, no matter how many times my wife yells at me. I'll pick Cecilia.
Hi, my name's Cecilia. I'm from New York City, and I'm an anthropologist. Currently, I work on a lot of different projects, including hydroponics and research in endangered languages. And I would like to integrate coding into all these projects that I do. An interesting fact about me is that I just started rock climbing, and I really like it. It's a great sport. Pretty much it. I pick Rosie.
Hi, this is Rosie. I completed my education in 2010, and because of some break, I want to resume my career as software development. So I just I'm doing part time, and my shift going to end 6:30. So somehow I make it, like driving hard and something. So I reach on time. So I'm doing part time as a teacher in a preschool, but I have done my masters, and but it took so breaks. It took me so break 5 or 6 years. So I really want to resume my the software development thing. So that's and my weirdest thing just start taking classes of swimming, and it's a first class today me, so it's really hard. I want to quit that, so nothing new. Yeah, thank you. And I want to pick it's Chelsea. Thank you, nice meeting you all.
Okay, my name is Chelsea. Right now I work at Northwell Hospital as a service desk analyst. I guess what draws me into software engineering is, just being able to, as a help desk analyst, you kind of just know like the hardware of the computer, kind of just how it's set up, how it connects to servers, how it runs through the network and everything. So I guess for software engineering, I want to know about the inside of the computer, how programs are running, and how to build my own programs and everything. And I guess the quirky thing about me is I've never been on a roller coaster, if that's a weird thing. If everybody's done that, I've never done that before. Yeah. Next person I'm going to pick is Taylor.
Hi guys. Sorry, my video is not working. I'll try to figure that out for tomorrow. I have been working in marketing and a little bit of web design for a nonprofit that it focuses on public health initiatives around healthy eating and getting more exercise. And I've really been enjoying the design work that I do there and want to continue on in that direction. And kind of still deciding whether I want to do front end or UI UX. Not really sure, but one thing I know is that I really do need to master JavaScript. So looking forward to this class. And one weird thing about me is that when I was a kid, I broke my arm about 6 different times. So yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna choose Steven.
How's it going? I'm Steven. I'm from the Bronx, New York. 20. I do security. I get off at 5:30, so I rush to get here at 6:30. But pretty much, I think I want to do front end. I'm not sure all about the details, but I really want to see if I can make a career out of this. And a weird thing about me is I'm a huge anime fan, so I guess you could do that. And I'll choose Ashley.
Wait, what anime? You can't just say anime. That's ridiculous. You gotta.
One Piece. One Piece is that's my all-time favorite.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Sorry, didn't mean to distract everyone.
No, you got it. But yeah, I choose Ashley.
I think you're still muted. I see you trying to talk. Yes, no, maybe so. Ashley, are you there? No? We can't hear you. Yeah. Are you able to unmute? There you go.
Okay. Sorry, I've never used this before. My name's Ashley. I'm originally from Virginia, but I've been living in New York for about 10 years now. I was working in nonprofit fundraising for a while, but kind of decided I didn't like it and want to do a career change. Lately, I've been doing a lot of different things, but I guess this can also be the weird fact about me. Right now I'm working in a bowling alley in Queens.
Sounds fun.
I'm not sure who is left. I'll pick Nancy.
Are you talking to me? Oh, hello?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry. Did you, I guess I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Nancy. I'm a fellow for this first class. I'm currently a fellow at Full Stack Academy. So I'll be your fellow for this day. So you guys can submit help tickets if you need help, and I'll be here to answer any questions.
Well, you have to tell us an interesting thing too. You've now joined the kingdom, so.
I guess I moved to New York City a year ago. I used to do PR, and now I do coding. So totally different.
Okay. Can you pick someone else in the room who hasn't gone? Good luck with that.
Oh, I'm not sure. I guess, I don't know. It has a person next to me. I just joined a few minutes ago. I don't know if Cecilia has gone.
She has.
Okay.
Just
yeah, I'm not sure who.
Keep saying names until you get someone.
Jacob? No. Already went? Okay, see Matthew. Okay, he's good. I see I guess raise your hand if you have not gone. How about Navira?
Hi everyone, my name is Navira. I currently live in Las Vegas and I'm a stay-at-home mom. And before that, I was a handbag designer. A quirk about me is that anyone who knows me really, really well does not allow me to drink coffee after 11 because I'm normally a hyper person and coffee just sets me on a whole different level. So when I used to work, everyone's really strict about cutting me off after 11:30 a.m. for coffee. So I guess that says a lot about the type of person I am. I pick C.D. Kirkwood.
Hi, I'm Connor. I just said that as my username. I am originally from California, currently currently here working as a sales rep for a craft beer distributor. So I drink a lot of beer during my work. A weird thing about me is I play with my hair a lot when I get stressed and I'm learning new things. So you'll probably see that kind of weird. So just be aware of that. I'll choose Chung.
Hey everyone, my name is Chung. You guys hear me? All right, yeah, my name is Chung. I'm from New York. I live in Queens. Actually, a physical therapist. I started my first day at a new job today, so there's that. Trying to do coding as a potential career change, secondary career before it's too late. Interesting thing about me is I have a dog, actually a corgi. His name is Pork Chop, and hopefully he won't be bothering us too much. Let me choose Anoop. Anoop Dylan.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Calgary, Alberta, and sorry about that screen. I'm going to try to get that working here shortly, but I work as a clinical application specialist for a small consulting company, and we consult for two radiologist groups. We do have some developers, software developers within my company, so that's kind of where my interest sparked. Although I'm very new with coding, so I kind of got myself up to speed with Java myself here in the last 3-4 weeks. I guess interesting fact about myself, I don't know how to swim, although I took swimming lessons twice. I just can't seem to get it. So yeah, I would pick, let's see, is it Jing?
Hey, Jane, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
Hello, I'm Jing Jing. I'm a stay-at-home mom right now. Before that, I worked in finance. I was an equity analyst for quite a while. And now I was thinking about a career change. I was interested in coding. I don't have that much experience. I only learned a little bit of Python before and a little bit of R. I thought about entering into the world of data analysis, working as a data analyst or things of that nature. But then I think software engineer might be more interesting, and I think it would be a better career path. A lot of friends advised. I hope that's the case. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't have anything interesting about this. I just want to let you know, if you heard of someone screaming or crying, it might be my daughter. So don't be alarmed. So that's it.
Well, now you have to pick someone, but other than that.
Because I just joined like a few minutes ago. Who hasn't talked about him, her or himself? So Paige Steering. I'm not sure my pronunciation is correct.
You said it right. Okay, so I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York. Right now, I'm currently in Brazil, visiting my boyfriend. I've worked at a lot of restaurants in the Chelsea area of New York City. I've been a New York City lifeguard for 7 years. I don't know if no one knows what that is. If you go to Coney Island and you see a lifeguard in orange, I do that, but at a pool. Guess interesting fact about me would be I'm here doing this in Brazil. I don't know. And I guess that's it.
Cool. I know we're getting down to the bottom here. I think we're still haven't heard Yeah. Have we? We haven't heard from everyone. I feel like we're like 2 off right now. Paige, are you gonna pick?
Oh yeah. I'm looking. Raise your hand if you didn't go.
It always gets precarious at the end. I know
I
it.
see everybody.
I haven't heard from Vitali.
I was just gonna say her actually, but Vitali.
Yeah, I'm here.
Or sorry.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So my name is Vitaly. I'm originally from Russia. Now I live in Staten Island, New York, and I'm working as a dispatcher in an ambulance company. To be a programmer, it was like a dream. So I'm trying to make it like dream come true. And the weird thing about me is that I'm mining cryptocurrency, Bitcoins, Ethereum, a little bit weird. So that's it.
No, they can't hear. Oh.
Cool. I mean, it's pretty normal in the industry. I would say it's like kind of weird if you're not in software. Like basically everyone I know is mining or trading or something or the other. Is that it? I feel like maybe we're 1 off. I feel like I was trying to count in my head, but I can't tell. If you haven't gone, make a weird sound. Okay. Is that it? Anybody gonna speak up? Okay, cool. It was really nice to meet you all. Honestly, we're gonna just get to know each other over the length of this course, hopefully. That being said, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. And I guess one thing I'd say just from that experience we just had is those of you showing up late probably just experienced your first time where you had no idea what was going on. It's kind of trivial today because, well, we're not really doing much today. But going forward, I want to be clear that I do not back up and I will not try to help anybody who's late, and you will absolutely miss content and absolutely get in the way of people. And I take being late pretty seriously. So just understand it won't be very good for your own education. I'm just being honest, and I hope you prefer honesty. Okay, that being said, let's go on to the next slide. Here's the course. It's 4 weeks, it's 4 classes a week. That's a little bit of a lie with us because of Thanksgiving. I don't know if you guys know this. We have some changes to our course. I don't remember the specifics off the top of my head. I think the deal is that we get Thanksgiving off, and then the day after we have class, like that Friday. And then there's some other week we have a Friday. I can't remember why. Some holiday I'm forgetting. But I could get the real schedule out to you guys. But otherwise, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Generally, every single class is a new concept in JavaScript. I really don't like that, though, and I know you're all coming here and have done some WebMDing, but the programming version, and tried to figure out what we do at Full Stack and why JavaScript is important or not. Really, I don't teach JavaScript. It's just the language of choice that I teach you in. I teach you software in general. I teach you paradigms of programming. I teach you about how programming works in general. This is less a language-based course with me than it is just a concepts course. We use JavaScript to be able to show how we might interact with those concepts. But I want to clarify now that we teach software engineering and not JavaScript engineering. Those are 2 very different things. I will never take you into the browser and work with divs and H1s and any of that stuff. I really won't. And honestly, Full Stack Immersive doesn't do a ton of that either. They do enough to get you off the ground, but what you do with software engineering knowledge is kind of up to you. Every single lecture, and we're going to talk a lot about this today, is paired with programming problems and you are paired with a partner in this class to tackle those programming problems with. We call this series of programming problems I'm going to give you on a daily basis a workshop. That is just our title for it here. And it's what you'll see it referred to as in LearnDot. They range anywhere from you'll fly through and finish before we meet back up for a review to you're going to hate it and maybe finish one or two in the hour or two I give you to solve them and just be really sour when we come back to class. There's a pretty wide range of difficulty on those, so I can't tell you like how long any given one of these is. I'll also, in the beginning it's a little harder, but as we get a little further, like third week onwards, like really second week onwards, I will always have something for you to do should you finish early. Like actually, we give out some projects and I can also recommend resources. So this is me. I just want to be clear that this is not like traditionally a boot camp prep thing. This is that I arguably invest too much in my students, but maybe that works out for you. So the on-campus equivalent of this, when you're attending class, there's kind of the ability to like find me when you're doing the workshops or you have extra time and talk to me, right? Obviously, we're not on campus and you can't just find me. So that is kind of something I feel like you guys were missing out on, was the ability to talk to me outside of lecture time. So I actually do up to 3-hour review on Saturdays. There's been times where it's been on Sundays. I know this maybe sounds inconvenient, but there's really no more convenient time for a variety of reasons. One being most people here work. Two being of working days, we already work 4 of them. People would be less available on Friday nights, and Saturday and Sunday nights would be the same, right? So what I found was the perfect time is 12 to 3 on Saturdays, because you could still sleep in, you can still attend, and I don't get in the way of your Saturday night. This is the only opportunity you have to potentially have one-on-one time with me. This is a chance for you to ask me about fundamentals you're missing and not understanding. A chance for you to show up with work you're doing on the side and ask me to like help you with something. Or if you're one of the people kind of getting ahead or exploring new stuff, it's a chance just to talk to me as someone who probably knows a lot more than you about concepts that we maybe don't cover in class. This is like really an opportunity I provide you guys. Nobody on campus gets the same thing. That being said, because it's optional, I'm not obligated to anything here. I want to be clear about that. So like, if you're going to ask me for recordings, I'm not going to give them to you. If you're going to ask me to like sit around for an hour in a video room because you want to show up at 1 and not 12, I'm going to log off if nobody shows up. I'm not sitting in a video room alone for an hour. Sorry, guys. But if you show up at 12 on a Saturday, I will stay as long as it takes to satisfy your inquisitiveness. So again, this is entirely optional. I will not judge you. But I want to be clear like that this is a major resource I provide. It is always underused, and I often find students who have the hardest time with this class and then complain that it's moving too fast also don't show up on Saturdays. So this is my one kind of, it's going to sound cruel, but I have no pity for you if you fall behind and you are not showing up to review sessions that I take 3 hours out of my Saturday to give you. And I promise this class will move fast. So if you're getting behind and you're not using those, you're hurting your own success in this class. Okay? Do we all understand that? I'm sorry for the harsh words. I'm normally not this way. I just really want to have this stick in your brain when stuff starts getting hard. So please, please, please use Saturdays to your advantage. Okay. Full stack, as well as me, just separately, but we believe in some values. We do. We actually have beliefs. One, and this is like more important than people tend to take it, be patient with yourself and with others. Yourself more probably than others. you're going to watch me fly through some stuff and it's going to aggravate you. You're going to have spent like a long time working on problems you can't figure out, and then you're going to see someone else go through them. Do not get angry with yourself. I had to struggle just as long as you're all going to have to learn these concepts. And if you're ahead of someone else because you're putting in the extra hours, remember that we all have lives outside of here. Some people are single moms. Some people work 12-hour days. There's a lot of like variatics in the people in this class. It's honestly, most of the time, these classes are pretty diverse in where we all come from and what we do on a day-to-day basis. So be patient that other people may not have had time to review or catch up or whatever it takes. So if you are in a paired programming session, the other person's behind, the best thing you can do for yourself and them is be super patient and be super helpful and just try to teach the concept or help with the concept. Don't push onward. It's not a race. The point is not to finish every problem. Please, please ask all the questions, especially with JavaScript. JavaScript made some really dumb decisions in how it was designed. So don't just assume things work because it seems like they should. You should absolutely question everything. That is a really important trait of software in general, is assume nothing and question everything. And you should ask the dumb questions, the smart questions, and everything in between. I will not judge you. Trust the process. Seriously. I promise you 4 weeks from now, you're going to be in disbelief at how far I've taken you. Really. But I expect you to do things for me as well. Be on time. I am not going to slow down for late people or absentees. You are only hurting yourself. I understand people are absent and sometimes people have jobs and are late. That being said, I'm recording this lecture, remember? And the content is available afterwards. So I have a lot of tools I've provided for people that have real lives that get in the way. Yes, right? So these videos go up on YouTube. I send them to you. You can do the workshop at any time. And I offer Saturday review sessions. So if you have to be late or you have to no-show, don't feel the need to like disrupt class the day after the day you show up late. Is that a fair trade? I continue to provide everything you need. You don't get in the way of the actual live segments. I can't say enough about this, and I'll talk about this a little, but help each other, teach each other, befriend each other. This sounds crazy, but you're all each other's best resources. You want to know why? Because if everything goes ideally and your plan to like pivot and start making like a 6-figure salary and be awesome, like works out exactly how your brain wants it to, the people who are going to enter the job market at the same time as you are these other squares on your screen right now. You're all here at the same time. You're all going to apply to the same immersive class at the same time. You're going to graduate at the same time. You're going to all enter the job market at the same time. You're going to need to network at the same time. You do not want to burn bridges right now. These people you're surrounded by, I'm telling you, the people I met at Full Stack, I still interact with 2 years later. I hired one. I have to interact with tons of them still. You really want to be as nice to each other as possible. It is in all of your best interest to get along. Does that make sense? You're on a long road together. So you want to be friends and you want to get along and you want to remember like the brownie points that you may earn with people here. We do like to have fun. Hopefully I already am coming off a little like too lax for you. That's maybe a good thing, maybe a bad. We'll see over time. But there's some things that come with having fun in class. Be mindful of a couple things. I already brought up isms, sexism, racism, ageism. We're not going to have any of it. I promise. I personally have never had to do this for a bootcamp prep class, but we will absolutely kick someone off this course if you break any of these. I promise. We will not flinch. Do not be that person. I shouldn't have to explain why. Be professional. We call this the no asshole policy. Professional. I don't really mind if you're not professional. Most software engineers aren't professional. I think the point here is to just like not be a dick. Just don't be one, right? who wins if you're a dick? Like, just be a good person. Like, it'll work out. I've iterated that a few times now. You're still each other's most valuable resource, so don't be a dick. And then, especially as people start to learn to use Slack, which I find a lot of people show up here and like have never used Slack before. But if you're lucky enough to have a job where you guys use it, you probably know what I'm talking about when I say Slack opens up a little too much lack of censorship in how like offices communicate. It's a very free space for communication. And sometimes people start sending GIFs and then like the content control starts dropping. If you ever have a doubt about the content of a GIF or something you're going to say being appropriate, probably don't send it. I like an occasional, like, funny, not safe for work thing. I just don't know that Slack is the place for it. I've never had to do anything about that, so I'm not really too worried you guys are, but it's probably worth mention. No nudity, right? I even think swear words are generally fine, but certainly no nudity on the Slack channel. Okay. This is obviously a little off for us because we have the Friday thing because of Thanksgiving, right? But this is more about, yeah, I know, sorry. But this is more about the classes. Like, don't worry about the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing. I'll get a more accurate, like, what days out to you guys via email. The actual purpose of this slide is to show you guys what each day is, not, like, the days they're on. And the important things here are here. So today we're on Introduction to Clean Code and an introduction in general. So what I would say is that week 1 tends to be a review of stuff I expect you all to have inklings of knowledge about from JavaScript Jumpstart. I am absolutely going to teach you more than you learn there. But generally, I am just like hammering in the basic foundations week 1. You should come out of week 1 ready to start learning the real stuff, like the stuff you need to learn to be beginning your journey into programming. I just need to get the basics into you, right? We all agree we need like a foundation for us all to start talking about code. Week 2 is gonna like ramp it up, I'm telling you. So at the end of week 1, if you're not comfortable with the stuff we've talked about, you absolutely want to study over this weekend. If you come out of this week not feeling comfortable, you need to freshen up on that. Or show up to review, or whatever you need to do to like feel good about week 1 material. Because week 2 is basically just objects. Arrays are just objects. We'll talk about that. But it's basically all objects. And objects are much tougher than they sound. I can't overstate that. You'll be struggling with objects for the next 3 years. Week 3, we basically just talk about JavaScript's eccentricities. The things JavaScript does that other languages really don't. Sometimes they're annoying. Sometimes they're beautiful. It's about finding the balance and learning to utilize those eccentricities to make yourself a very strong programmer. That can be a very, very, very challenging week for people. Really, week 3 will be very tough for you. You will absolutely have headaches, and you will not finish week 3 understanding all of those concepts. I will tell you right now. Week 4, this is going to sound kind of ridiculous. I don't really lecture. So week 4, day 1 is our final toughest day, recursion. If you don't know what recursion is, be happy. If you do, you should already be scared of what recursion 2 means. I don't know anybody who's ever finished all the problems on that day in all of bootcamp prep. So then, and this is from crowd request, by the way. Tuesday and Wednesday, we actually give a mock version of the full stack admissions test. We give 2 different versions, and they scale up a bit. And it's to do 2 things. It's to introduce you to the weird environment we use for the testing. It's not an environment you're going to have used before. It's an environment where like someone can watch you code and there's like test cases you need to pass. All sorts of new stuff. So we found when we throw people into it and they don't know what the environment is, they struggle just like understanding the environment. So that's part 1. And part 2 is for you to get a grasp on the difficulty of the exam. That being said, I tend to find that, well, I don't tend to find, I know that if you put effort in during this class and you come out of this class even feeling, I'm going to say 70%, if you come out of this class feeling 70% confident in the material I teach, you will absolutely get into full stack. 70% is a much scarier number than it sounds, believe me. You will see. You will see. I told you I'll promise that this class will be difficult. But that's that. And that's like all the learning we do. So then on this final day, this is another me thing on top of like review hours. Everyone uses the final day differently. I let you stop treating me as a teacher again. You already had to stop. We started without me as a teacher. Now I am. But final day, I stop, and you're allowed to interview me about my experience at Full Stack, what it was like to get into the job market, all that sort of stuff. And then I also bring a fellow along so that you get to interview a fellow who literally just graduated. So they will be like as close to your experience as possible, right? You're going to get to ask them about what it's like now, how they feel about entering the job market. And this is like completely candid. And I let everybody you're adults, but like I literally suggest everyone get a drink, and it's basically a long happy hour. And we just sit around and we talk about whatever you guys want. And people have found it like really helpful, because I think it's really nice to just like, we're all on the same journey, or I mean, I'm done with it kind of, but like you're all on the same journey, and it can be nice to like pull the code out of it for a second and just have a conversation about what that journey's like. I also bring someone from the admissions department who you can ask like more serious questions at the beginning of that, like about how many times you can apply, payment, whatever you guys want. The point is I try to get every single person you could possibly want to talk to about boot camps in the room so that you can ask all these questions. Does that seem like a good idea at the end of this whole thing? Hopefully. But that's our final day. And if you really want, we could talk about code a little bit. Sometimes people ask me about, and I think we get into it in this lecture. Sometimes people ask me about ES6, and I have to constantly say, like, I can't. We'll talk about that. But I sometimes will do a lecture on that day. Okay. So there's some expectations. Just like you have expectations of me, I kind of have them of you. Learning a language is a cumulative process. That means a couple things. For starters, if you have skimmed by and did not complete Jumpstart for some reason, please do. Really, I promise you, I do not slow down. And it's just going to get harder and harder. So you do not want to be behind today. It will catch up to you in 2 days. I was told, before you guys get here, I am told you were all forced to finish that class. So that's where I put my floor when I start teaching you. My floor for where I expect all of your knowledge to be is end of JavaScript Jumpstart. That is just how I'm explained where you guys are when we start this class. First week covers concepts you saw in Jumpstart, hopefully, but in greater depth. These are so crucial. Stay up to speed with the content. If you feel behind, I'm sorry, but I start from where we finished the day before. We only have 4 weeks, and I want to teach you as much as I can in 4 weeks. My goal personally for this class is that you guys leave here feeling like programmers, not ready to enter boot camp. I want you all to leave feeling like you are a programmer. Maybe not an employed one, but a programmer nonetheless. And that's a big goal for 4 weeks. Yes, we all agree. So I have to move at a certain speed, and it's fast. And I really try to give you guys every resource imaginable to be ready the next day. I don't care if you miss class. You can watch the videos online. You can do the workshops on your own. I'm going to recommend extra resources like books and podcasts that you can be listening to in your free time if you're really that busy and all you have is the subway commute. I will give everything I can, but do your very best to stay up to whatever lecture we're at. Okay? Fair warning. And if you struggle with anything, as I said right at the beginning of class, you can always Slack me. Like, I can always try to suggest even more, right? I can always try to like kind of personalize what you need to be like touching up on as we go through the class. Everyone struggles with different things, and you should not feel weird if a single topic is hard for you. Really, it's perfectly fine. Okay. This is super common for, new programmers. You've probably looked at like 80 web pages trying to figure out like what the highest paying programming language is and what full stack teaches and what kind of jobs you can do with JavaScript and like, I don't know, 20 other things about programming languages. Here's the thing. Firstly, that's a little outdated, that graph, but JavaScript is still one of the three, depends what chart you read, most popular programming languages of all time. I don't know if it's the most anymore. It's one of the most. And that's for a really simple reason, actually. And are you ready for it? There's only one language allowed on the entire internet, and it's JavaScript. Have you ever used a browser ever? Like Internet Explorer, Safari, like Chrome, any of those things? That's JavaScript. It's the only thing that runs there. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm telling you that's it. That's the only thing allowed to run on the entire internet. Anything else, like even if you wrote, like if you guys were around in like the 90s during Java applets, like the one most people know scarily is RuneScape. Like RuneScape was written in like Java. Even that has to be loaded in through JavaScript. There's no way to like natively plug in any language besides JavaScript. I don't know if you guys know this, but like kind of most of the biggest tech companies in the world are based on web apps, i.e. JavaScript. Google, like Amazon, even Microsoft to some degree, all of these people became big because they could access the internet. Like Windows isn't really all too important until it had internet connectivity. And internet connectivity wasn't all too important until the internet was interactive. All that's great. The other thing to mention about JavaScript is that, and I write a lot of languages, by the way. I know like 7 or 8 under my belt. I'm probably, JavaScript's like top 2 or 3 for me. JavaScript is one of the term we use in programming is semantic. It's one of the most semantic languages that you can write. The only one I've used that I would say is more semantic is Ruby, but Ruby's kind of a pile of garbage in my opinion. If you ever want to ask me about why, I will gladly defend that. I really will. I'm not afraid to. But semantic means, in layman's terms, sounds like English. And when I say that, what I mean is like when you read JavaScript code out loud, like you actually say the words, it sounds like something that makes sense, right? Like if num is greater than other num, then like do something, else do another thing. For 1 of 100, do something, right? This is like semantics. It is a very semantic language, and people tend to have an easier time like comprehending more complex code in JavaScript because it sounds a lot like a language. Lastly, and I don't know if we get here right now, that's fine too. JavaScript has had 3 ages, like 3 chapters in the JavaScript story. There was its invention at Netscape in the 90s. That's a weird era for JavaScript. It was kind of looked at like the weird cousin of Java, which isn't at all accurate, and I can talk about that more later. But Brandon Ike was basically told to write the Java for the internet, and he did it in 10 days. That's not a joke. It's terrifying. And that was the genesis of JavaScript. And it was a mess, but it was the only thing that could do what it did, which was make the internet interactive. And that's kind of seen as like the dark age of JavaScript. But it stuck around for a long time, and it became the only thing used in the browser to do that. And then some arguably very smart people developed something that you guys have probably heard of, but probably not used, called jQuery. And jQuery kind of changed the game. And what jQuery did was it was a giant abstraction on top of JavaScript, but it kind of like opened the door to like people seeing what a browser could do. this is probably when most of you started using the internet. This was the beginning of like Flash coming around, because even Flash had to use jQuery to some extent. It was the beginning of like really interactive web pages, because jQuery made all of this even easier than it should be. And jQuery took us all the way into the late 2000s. And then there was like the ES5/6 explosion, which was that JavaScript basically got remade. That's not entirely true the way I'm saying it, but it's a good way to view it. A council made up of all the biggest companies in the world came together, redesigned JavaScript to be like the thing that will power the web into the next stage of the web. And they did that, and it was highly successful. And JavaScript became so performant that Google developed a new engine to like do cool things with it called V8. I'm getting there, I promise. And V8 was so fast. It was closing in on the speeds of C++ when run in the browser. V8 was so fast that someone somewhere decided, what if JavaScript did something besides the internet? And I don't teach it here, but you will certainly learn it, and I'm always happy to talk about it. I use it all the time. And they developed Node. You've definitely heard the word Node. Node is JavaScript not on the browser. And Node is basically an operating system at some degree. If you wrote a really good application for Node, you could power an entire computer on just Node.js. Node absolutely changed the world, because what Node did was it made JavaScript the first ever language to do what we call the full stack. And what that means is that JavaScript can do everything from run a computer to display content on the web page, right? So in one language, you could write everything from how a computer runs to how a web page is delivered to the end user. This means that if you become a master at JavaScript, that you can do anything you want. Scarily, that evolution has kept going. Something was developed called Electron. Electron brought JavaScript to smartphones. So now JavaScript literally runs everything except embedded devices. Embedded devices is like a chip in your computer. We're not there yet, but I would not be surprised if we get there soon. So JavaScript is also a very powerful language, because everyone I know comes into this class and they're like, oh, all we're going to do is front-end engineering with JavaScript. The majority of full-stack immersive grads are not front-end engineers. An astonishing amount just get jobs in other languages because they graduate with such a good understanding of software that picking up a new language is easy for them. But actually, there's more back-end people that pop out of full-stack than front-end. And that's because JavaScript can do whatever it needs to do. So before you have miscomprehensions about JavaScript, my sell for JavaScript is you can learn anything in JavaScript, and if you learn mastery of JavaScript, you can pivot to any other language. The important thing is the concepts and the paradigms and understanding how programming works. JavaScript is just the tool I give you that works everywhere. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing is, and I'm sure you all know this, JavaScript killed everything else that ever tried to fight it. Flash, we all remember Flash. It's dead. Silverlight, which once ran Netflix, that's also dead. Netflix actually recently replaced their servers. Their old Java servers are now Node servers. So if you think Netflix is impressive, it is. It kind of streams a lot of video to a lot of people at once. That's an all JavaScript stack, which is ridiculous. But they do crazy stuff if you don't know about Netflix. They have a literal thing called Chaos Monkey. That's a library they wrote. And Chaos Monkey runs around. You can imagine, visualize what a Chaos Monkey looks like in your head. It runs around Netflix's servers and breaks things on purpose. And no, I'm not talking about like development servers. I'm talking about servers that are actually serving things to people and process payments. They have a piece of software that just runs around breaking code. And the whole premise was that if they can write a robust enough piece of software that they can have a piece of software running around breaking everything and nobody knows it, then they've really made great software. And that's very true. It is terrifying, but true. If you can write software that's broken every millisecond and it continues to operate exactly as it should, then you've written some really good software. So yeah, there's my little intro to JavaScript for you. That brings us to some of the tooling I'm going to use to teach you JavaScript. You're going to hear my voice way too much. Today's like the longest lecture of all time. I do not do lectures like this normally. But the most important part of your day here, I promise, will not be my lecture. It will be your pair programming. Pair programming goes way back. 2000 is not doing it justice. I have a book called, where is this? The Mythical Man Month from the 70s, where the guy talks about it all the time. And pair programming is the concept that, and I believe in this tremendously, is the concept that humans are actually like single-threaded. That's a programming terminology, but it means our brains can actually really only actively, like our conscious brain can only actively be working on one thing at a time. We call it threading because that doesn't mean that you can't pivot at remarkably fast speeds. And when I mean pivot, I mean, you could be saying, I'm going to program this for a long time. Like, I'm going to solve this problem. And you could flip for like 2 milliseconds to, oh, the rice is about to finish, and then come back. And think of it like a sewing needle. It's threading, right? We can maintain, like, we can move between a lot of different thoughts at ridiculously fast speeds, but we do one thing at once. And like all research says this. And what paired programming was an attempt to enable someone to enable a programmer to be able to do two things at once. And you've probably already experienced this. And one is, it's already hard enough to write code with the right syntax, like the things in the right places, the letters and the parentheses and the curly brackets. That's a full operation, right? It takes a lot of work to write code the right way. So one person does that, and that's called a driver. Their sole job is just writing the code. But then there's a navigator, and their job is two things: to plan ahead, to be watching the code get written and be thinking, but what about this situation? And what about that situation? But also to be error checking, to be looking at the code behind what's been written and to say, oh, like, I'm not sure that works. Like, you put a period there. I'm not sure a period's allowed there. Or, oh, you referenced the wrong variable. Paired programming is so important. I can't overstate it, and I'm gonna explain why. And I think it's twofold in my head. One is that the majority of coding, 95% of professional coding, when you're being paid money to do it, you are not writing code. Probably 60% of the time is planning, 20% of the time is debugging, 20%, like 15% of the time is documentation and writing tests. That leaves 5% of the time you're writing code. So if we had a class where all you did was write code, you would actually come out of it entirely unskilled for the job market. Does that make sense? Secondly, and this is the more important thing, is at some point you have to get interviewed to get a job in programming. And when you get interviewed for programming, it's actually not so much always about the code you write. It's about, and it's going to sound stupid, but it's true, it's about being able to talk about the code you write. If I never made you talk about the code you're writing, you would be really bad at programming. Nobody cares about what somebody can do in isolation, right? Like, that's not how an office with 50 engineers works. You have to be able to talk to each other about programming and coding. And maybe you've experienced this already, but I promise one of the hardest things to do is explain how your code works and why it works that way. That can be tremendously difficult, and we really try to force that on you. That is part of pair programming, is I know there's communication gaps between you all. You are not going to be good at this. It is going to be very hard to talk about code with each other, but you just have to keep trying and keep working on getting better at explaining code. And that's a very big skill that I want you all to know I know is a challenge. And it will be tough for you guys. So really just, again, we go back to one of these rules: be patient with yourself and others. It will be very hard to talk about code. So like, take your time with it and learn to get used to it. There's so many tips for getting the most from this course. Do all the things. That's honestly as simple as it can get. Even if you don't finish the workshops on time, then do the workshops on your own time afterwards when we're not paired programming. Then if I suggest resources to you, maybe get the resources. And if you didn't see a video, watch the video, and I think you get the point. We offer a lot of resources. Do them all. You don't have to. These are tips for getting the most from this course. Don't look at solutions until you give it an honest try. You might tell yourself in your head, like, oh, I'm going to learn so much just from seeing the solution. You won't. Trust me, you won't. Nobody does. I'm sure you all know this if you've had jobs, but the best way to get good at something is just to do it. There's no cheat for it. There's no hack around it. And I'm all about hacks that make me lazier. I'm going to preach that to you going forward, is always take the laziest possible solution to something. But there is no shortcut to getting good at something. There really isn't. You just have to keep doing it. And you're not going to be that good at first, and you'll slowly get better. So don't look at those solutions. You should really push yourself to the point where you want to break your computer before you look at a solution. If you break a computer, that's fine too, just as long as you have money for another one. It's hard to attend class without a computer. Don't be a perfectionist. And there's always 2 or 3 a class. Don't be this person that needs the best possible code. Even at work, I'm paid a pretty fair amount of money for what I do. I am never allowed to write the code I want to write. I just want to be clear. You'll never be allowed to write the code that's perfect. If you were, bugs wouldn't exist in software. And you guys have used computers before. Everything has bugs. The reason everything has bugs is because time is finite. Real programming is twofold, right? It's about getting a solution, but it's also about the fact that somebody has to pay you to get the solution, and they don't want to pay you forever to get the best solution. They just need something that works in 80% of use cases most of the time. So feel free to talk about the best solutions, but oftentimes you don't need to do everything the most ridiculously good way as possible, right? I'm going to be a stickler about other things you should be perfect on, which is today's lecture, but we're not even there yet. And those things are tidy code, but we'll get there. I'm a stickler on other things. We'll talk about this at the end. I do a much bigger talk about this when this course ends, but you absolutely want to keep momentum going. I guess the more important thing to say, other than after this course is over, is during this course. If for some reason you have to miss a couple days, you go on vacation or something, you're going to have a really hard time getting back. My goal, and one of my goals, to be clear with you all, is I want to take you from you're almost close to sedentary in my mind right now. You're all probably learning if else, and you're starting to do preliminary research on programming and what jobs look like and some stuff. But in my mind, I think of people and their programming journey as velocity. And you guys are moving at a pace where you're only learning control flow, maybe you're writing your first functions now. You're not picking up a lot in time. I want you to leave this course, and I want you to feel if I ask you to learn a new language on week 5 after this course is done, I want to feel in 2 days you'd be able to write a simple program. And that has less to do with how much time I want you investing and more to do with how fast, the velocity at which I think you can learn programming. So over the course of this course, I am going to try to make the momentum go faster and faster. I'm going to try to make the hill steeper for the rolling boulder that is your knowledge. I am going to ask you to learn more every day. And you're going to be surprised at how quickly you can learn. You will. So just don't lose that momentum. Wherever I get you to, try not to lose it. If you have to take a few days off, practice some problems on your own, right? And I'll give you some resources for doing practice problems. But you do not want to get into the sitting on your couch binging Walking Dead last 2 seasons before it comes on next Sunday. You want to always be keeping the speed going that we get you to. I highly suggest side projects. If you need ideas, we're not there yet. Beginning of week 2, we can talk about this, but I'll suggest side projects and other things to get your mind thinking about things I don't necessarily teach in this course. They are things that if I had unlimited time with you guys, I would teach. But we don't, and I have to get like the most into you, and I can't go to everything. So I can certainly suggest side projects where you'll learn about other things that are important. I also have some books I suggest. If you just want the names really quickly, in case I forget, it's Eloquent JavaScript and You Don't Know JS. I personally am a huge believer in You Don't Know JS. Both of these books are free online. I need paper books, that's me, but if you're fine with like reading on a computer, they're both there. There's a huge argument about which is the better beginner book. I think You Don't Know JS is kind of heady, but it really explains everything in detail. Like he dives into like why, and I find why to be a really interesting question. Eloquent JavaScript is more how. It's like, how do you do these things? Your preferred learning method is not something I know. So give them both a try and see which one works better for you. And specifically for us, review sessions. They're completely optional. I'm not judging you if you don't show up. I'm only judging you if you don't show up and then complain to me on Monday that you feel behind. That I might judge you for. But you should use them to your advantage. Like even if it's just being inquisitive, right? Even if it's just coming and talking about things we don't talk about in class. It's just extra resources for you. Here are some rules for remote that I've developed over time. First, you've probably noticed since I've done it to like 15 of you at this point, I will mute your mic like very quickly. People should be able to focus on like me lecturing. That's not me like being arrogant or full of myself. I don't even like my own voice, so I don't know how you guys could, but like it's hard to focus on me and like a dog barking in the background or like me and like whatever's going on in your life. We get it. You have a life too and you have a voice. Please ask questions. That is the one time. Just turn your mic off and shout at me. You can be like, Elliot, shut up. Well, not really, but you can be like as funny as you want to be. I like humor. But whatever you want to be, like, again, please ask dumb questions. Please ask all the questions. That's the one time you can absolutely turn your mic on at any point during a lecture and just be like, Elliot, I have a question. Or Elliot, what about this? What about that? Like, please do. That's often a great form of learning. This we haven't done yet. You're going to do it today, so you'll see what I mean. But do not leave the breakout room once you've joined. Breakout rooms are where I'm going to ship you. They're like a magical video room with just you and a partner for paired programming, but they're like children room of this video room. Once you've joined a room, if you leave it, you've screwed up like the whole algorithm we use to pair you into teams. You're going to like, if you sign off for something, you mess things up more than you know, and you may get stranded alone. So I tend to just tell people, once you've joined class at 6:40, don't exit Zoom until class is over. Does that seem like the simplest version of this advice? There's really no reason to exit. If you like need to disappear for a little, just turn your video and your mic off. I promise you, there's no way to sneak your video on. I can't do it. Just like turn your mic and your video off and like do whatever you need to do. That's completely fine. Don't sign out. You're going to screw something up. Cameras on always sound sketchy. I promise. Like I don't like my privacy being invaded, and I'm not the NSA. The cameras on always is something I learned during my like teaching remote immersive, like the 3-month, 8-hour-a-day version of this. I love remote. I'm a huge believer that remote work is going to become a bigger and bigger thing in our society. But the thing is, remote kind of like dehumanizes this a little bit. You probably know what I'm talking about. It's hard to feel like we're all people. Especially if you're a freaking gray square on a screen with like white text over it. So that's kind of my point. Please, please, please have your camera on. I will make fun of you and call you out or whatever it takes to get you to put your camera on. This is just during lecture. I am like outside of lecture, or if you go to the bathroom or you're having like a private conversation with your significant other or your husband or your wife, you can absolutely turn your camera off. I get it. I'm not like crazy. But like we should all kind of feel like we're dealing with people and like not the Hollywood squares that are all gray kind of scenario. So this is just like a personal thing. I get it on day one. I even say that there because like you all had no idea what to expect and you may not have a video camera set up. But in the future, I would really like if you all can figure out having videos and keep them on. It really makes class that much better, I promise. Money. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Nobody gains anything from talking about money in this class. Like, if you really want to talk about money, like, you should have gone to school for economics or something. This is software engineering. We're here to learn code. Let's talk about code. Does that seem like my one fair rule for off-limits conversations? So that's about it. I can absolutely set you up with the people at Full Stack who talk about money. They're not me. That's that. So it's 2017, and you guys have probably heard this term. It's a good buzzword. If you're developing buzzword soup to, like, especially if you're in sales, you know buzzword soup. But Full Stack is a big believer in data-driven decision-making. And data-driven decision-making involves gathering data from you. And that's what we call feedback. So we love feedback here at Full Stack. We get all the feedback. We're going to take feedback every day from you is how much feedback we get. So at the end of every paired programming lecture, you have the option to give feedback on your partner, the partner you pair program with. Here's what I'm going to say about that, because I've had a lot of experience with this. Don't write me feedback if it's like medium. My whole thing about the feedback system is you really should only use it for extremes. If you just like really loved the educational experience you had pairing with someone, feel free to tell me. I'll try to pair you more together. If you hated it and thought you got nothing from it, you can tell me that too. I'll try not to pair you together. That being said, remember a big goal here is to get you ready for like the professional workspace where you have to work with people you may not like. So when I say really don't like someone, I mean like it was really a bad experience. I'm not talking about like uncomfortable or awkward or like a little bad or their dog barked in the middle of the thing. Like I'm talking like it has to be pretty awful. Because you should really be trying to get along with people that you may not normally get along with, and to be working with people because one day you're going to be in an office and you're not going to have the choice, right? So please kind of view it that way. Don't think every single pairing is going to be comfortable and awesome and perfect. Really try to make it work. But if you need to make it like clear it did not work at all, feel free to do so. You'll absolutely get to bash my teaching methods and everything at the end of this course. They will ask you for a review of me. I expect a wonderful, thorough review of how terrible I am. But if you feel like leaving positive comments too, I do accept those. And I think you get to review the fellows. I don't know why that would matter because they're not hired. They're leaving in like 2 months anyway. The fellowship is 3 months after you graduate and then you're just gone. There's no like alternative. It's not like you get an extension. So feel free to write reviews about fellows. I don't know what it's going to do. So like, I guess you're just letting people know that you don't like them. Maybe not the nicest thing to do, especially with no consequences. But if you want to do it, all to you. I think you also get to review like the course and its content in general. That I'm a big fan of. Like even in class, if you want to tell me, like I'm a believer in this because I help make the content sometimes. Please tell me if you didn't like the content, like of the workshops, not of, like the slides. I don't care about the slides. I'm talking about the meat of this course is the problems you have to do together. And if like some problem really just wasn't good, let me know. Seriously. I will like make immediate adjustments to stuff like that. I am a big believer that the content in this course should be high quality. Let me know if it isn't for you. That's like probably the most important review in my mind. Okay, that's a lot, right? I told you today's lecture is not fun. I do not lecture like this normally. So here are some things to step back and remember. Not every moment of this lecture is critical to your success as an engineer. Really, it's not. It's cool if you remember every moment, but you don't need to like beat yourself up. Enjoy the struggle. I can't say this enough. Like, if you're not a little masochistic, programming may not be for you. Like, it absolutely hurts sometimes to be working on the same problem for like 45 minutes and realize that you like forgot to put like an A somewhere in your script of like 500 lines. Like, it's gonna mess with your head a little bit. It's gonna hurt. Kind of learn to enjoy the small victories like that. When you finally find the bug and that one A and you put it there, Like, really take a breath and enjoy what you accomplished. You need to learn to appreciate like the little things in code, because there's not enough of them, and you should absolutely love them for all the struggle you put in to get there. Conceptualize. Find ways to remember weird concepts. Like, try to think of like anagrams or whatever you need. Like, try to start thinking about what these are in the real world and like what these tools I'm going to teach kind of mean. I feel like I have more to say on that. I guess my other thing to say, and I find especially some of my crazier, in a good way, my crazier students who just start working like all the time once this course starts, it can be really important to like step away from the computer and like just take a walk for like an hour sometimes. Because I seriously believe in this, and a lot of people have written the same thing in programming books, that a lot of my best programming is done away from the computer. A lot of times, like, things will snap into place for me when I'm just like out and about doing other things. Like, they'll finally click. So if you're really struggling with like a problem, maybe you just need to like step up and like walk around for a second and like think about it in like different way, right? Not like as black text on a white screen. And always reach out if you're having problems. Okay. For those of you having done research, you've definitely run into this. ES5, ES6, what the heck am I talking about? So in BCP, this course, we teach ES5. I teach ES5. These are versions of JavaScript we're talking about. And JavaScript versioning is going to keep happening. We're already at ES8, by the way, and I'm teaching you guys ES5. Forgive me. And that's a really good thing that we continue to version. New features are going to keep being added, but here's the thing, and the most important thing. ES5 is the only thing that is supported across all browsers. Remember that the thing that runs JavaScript is your internet browser. And there's a lot of different internet browsers. There's Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome, Canary, Chromium. I mean, we could keep going. Opera. I don't know what you guys are using. Whatever you use, all of these different browsers need to implement their own version of JavaScript. That means that they all can do it in different ways. The only one that works across all of them is ES5. Really. So the reason we teach ES5 is because it works everywhere. It's the one thing that like you don't need special tooling to make sure it works. The other thing to mention is that ES6 and onwards we have a term for this. It's called syntactic sugar. And we call it syntactic sugar because it's like powder on top. Like you're shaking extra stuff on top and making it taste better. And that's a great way to think about it, because every newer version of JavaScript isn't actually JavaScript written in a new way. It's JavaScript where we've taken like chunks of complex ES5 code and hidden them behind small keywords to make really hard to do things in ES5 a lot easier in future versions. That's important to mention because what it means is that if you don't understand ES5, you don't understand how and why these ES6 and onwards tools are working. You should absolutely be struggling to understand how everything works under the hood. You want to come to know the nuances of how the machinations of JavaScript work. You do. It's very important. So if I taught you abstractions, then you wouldn't really understand the underlying principles. So even I need to use ES5 all the time. It is exactly what you should learn in this course. But if you're like inquisitive and curious and want to learn more, feel free to use ES6 around me. Probably don't use ES6 around your partner. I would stick to ES5 during paired programming, but if on your own time you want to use ES6, please do. I'm not saying it's not good. Like, I use it all the time and I love it. But you should absolutely understand the fundamentals before you learn the abstractions. Okay. All right, I'm going to give us, it's been a long lecture so far. I promise this isn't every day. Most days it's 30 to 45 minutes a lecture. It's just the first week there's a bunch of like double lectures. So we're about to do writing tidy code, which is like my actual coding segment of this. It is 8:15 You can all take a 5-minute like bathroom break. Let's come back at 8:20. Don't sign out. Just turn your video and your mic off. We'll come back at 8:20 and I'll start this lecture. Sound good? Okay, I'll see you all in a second. Okay. I'll give it like a minute or two. Well, no, not a minute or two, 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Go back to screen sharing. Sorry. Okay. So today our lecture is super short. I don't know how I didn't get into this, but I'll just quickly say it's somewhere. I don't know where it is. I could do it on this slide. It doesn't matter. Normal structure of the day is like lecture, paired programming, review. Today, we're going to do the review tomorrow because I feel like you guys aren't going to have enough time to actually do the workshop with your partner today. Otherwise, makes sense. This lecture always goes way over time. We'll talk more about that beforehand. That being said, today's lecture might seem silly, but it's anything but silly. And it's about writing tidy code. That sounds like the simplest thing of all time. It is everything but simple. What do I mean when I say tidy code? I mean using proper and consistent indentation, using camel case. There are all sorts of casing. Because JavaScript is JavaScript, it chose camel casing. It's just the standard in this language. There are lots of standards in JavaScript. This is the one. Descriptive names for your variables, commenting your code, but most importantly, consistency. There is no better golden rule for tidy code than consistency. Okay, but let's talk about these things. So we said to use, let me blow this up a little more for you guys, use proper and consistent indentation. We said to, camel case, comments, but most importantly, consistency. Okay, so proper and consistent indentation. So if we were writing a function named, let's do bad code first. Let's do bad and then we'll get to good. So function A might be that it takes B and it says B return B plus 1. And then if we console.log like if we console.log A3, we can expect 4. Great, it did its thing. But let's like break this down now. So there are all sorts of issues with this. But you might be looking at it and saying, it works, there's not an error. Wrong, just wrong. I would absolutely, if you sent me this code and said it adds 1, is that right? I'd say I am not even going to look at that after I read the first line. And let me talk about why. First, well, they kind of missed one here. I know it was in there, but it should be its own, which is good naming. This function is actually a function that adds 1. That's its name. A function should be named whatever it does. Yes, we all can agree to that, hopefully. There is no clearer or better rule for how a function should be named. A function is named what it does, period. Be as descriptive as it takes. There is like, this sounds crazy. If it took you like 6 words to describe what a function does, use 6 words. I am a huge believer in say whatever it takes and name things whatever you need to name them for a programmer who had no idea what your code did to understand what your code does by the time they're done reading your code. Okay. This parameter right here, B is a pretty terrible name for this too. If we were going to be really clear, I'd probably call this num to be added to, right? That's pretty excessive, one might say. I'm fine with it though. I think that honestly, probably like a num is fine. Like all we need to know is that there's a function that adds 1 to a num, right? That is a pretty concise and clear thing. This is me, and we'll talk about this. I think there should always be a space before the bracket. I think that you're trying to make clear there's a bracket. It shouldn't get tripped up in the parentheses. That's not a rule we have above. That's just a me thing, and I'm showing you because maybe you care what professional coders do. Now we're at consistent indentation. Every single time a bracket appears in your code, the line following the bracket must be indented by 1 unit. Elliot, what's a unit? I'm so glad you asked. We're at the Silicon Valley joke that I expect a lot of you have heard, tabs versus spaces. Here we are, our first opinionated conversation about code. Here's the thing I'll admit right now. You are never going to get a non-opinionated answer on this question. So there's my forewarning. And we'll circle back to that. But in programming, you may not know this. There's actually 2 ways to indent. One of them you know because you've written English before, and it's spaces. We can hit the space bar and insert spaces. Cool. You can also use, and I'm sure you guys know this, tabs, right? And tabs move a tab away. There's some misconceptions here about tabs versus spaces, and I'm going to attempt to talk about them now. Tabs are not made up of however many spaces you see. You see 2 spaces. You think that a tab put 2 spaces there. You're wrong. A tab actually is putting that there, /t. Your computer reads /t and inserts up to some amount of space. Every environment is different about this. I think Microsoft Word tab is 4 spaces. I think in a lot of editors it's 2. And space is not actually what's there. It's like, I'm talking about a width. Think about a width as the largest possible piece of font you could put in that space. That's actually what a space is too, if you didn't know that. It's called an EM in programming. But it's the largest possible piece of font you could put in that space's width. That is how big a space always is. So /t here is going to be a tab of some set amount. Some people like that. When I talk about spaces though, the thing you may be misconceiving is you're like, why would I want to hit tab? Why would I want to hit the space bar twice? Now I'm going to confuse you. You can set your tab key to insert instead of /t. You can actually set your tab key on your keyboard to insert 2 spaces automatically instead of a /t. Okay, what's the difference? Honestly, not a ton. This is where we get into all opinion. In my personal opinion, the difference for me is that I want a space to be a space. I don't want it to be some hidden character that you can't see on the screen. When I look at my code, excuse me, when I look at my code, I want to see whatever it is there, right? I don't want any underlying hidden things in some text file that I'm entirely unaware of. So for me, spaces are the non-invisible thing. Spaces are spaces. There's no secret character. They just are, right? That's what spaces do. A tab's a little weird for 2 reasons to me. One, tabs are interpreted as different amounts of space on every computer and every environment. So if someone else loaded up your code on their computer, they don't see the same thing you see. Does that make sense? And anytime someone loads up my code, I want them to see whatever it is I wrote exactly how I wrote it. And that's spaces for me. Some people like tabs. And I'm just going to kind of stop, and you can choose your own. And I'm going to do this. spaces versus tabs, who makes more money? Because Stack Overflow, our wonderful programming site, actually did a study on this. And guess what? People who, come on, Stack Overflow, people who use spaces make about $5,000 more a year on average. So before you decide if you're a spaces or tabs person, just take that into consideration. And I'm going to end my discussion on spaces versus tabs there. The big thing for me and you guys that you need to take away is I really don't care what you use. Like, it's actually under the hood. I don't care. All I care about, and we're going to keep coming back to this, is that you use the same thing every time. If I go into a file of yours and it's half tabs and half spaces, I am going to get angry. You want to be consistent. That is the key rule. You could be a tabs person or a spaces person, and I'm indifferent. Please use the same thing all the time, whatever it is you use. It's the same thing I would say when you get to choose this. You get to choose however many spaces are in a tab. Be consistent about that. If you're like me and you like a space before the bracket, do it every time. Are we following this? The whole policy about tidy code is consistency. You should be able to defend your choices to other developers who might ask, if the code looked like this, and I saw your code and was like, why though? I would expect you to have an opinion, but I'd also expect that if there was another function that was, wow, not what I was looking for, that was this, but it was add to, I would expect, sorry, let's also fix this. I would expect that they look exactly like that. If add to instead looks like this after your add one function, I would think you're a crazy person. You're literally having multiple personality disorder in your code file. Don't do this. I don't care what you do. Be able to defend it and be consistent about it. Is that fair? That is the most important thing in all of tidy code. If you follow those two rules, you're pretty much good. That being said, I'll espouse some of my opinions on you in regards to this. There are some ones that are kind of you can't really argue with. One of them is descriptive naming. Good is not doing good enough for me. Descriptive naming. That's a big one. For most developers, 99% of developers are going to care about this. I believe, and you saw how this was originally, I believe before and after any operator, an operator is any symbol that denotes two values or more performing some operation with each other. An operator is a plus symbol because it takes two numbers and adds them together. I believe spaces should go around them. I think it looks better. I also think that sometimes, especially when you're glossing over really small print code, it can be hard to determine what exactly, and if you look at my actual code editor, I have it closed, I'm sorry, but it could get tripped up with an actual character in the string, right? You want it to be very clear that you're adding numbers together. Not that it might be add num t1. You want it to be very clear that this is an addition operation. This is basically perfect function syntax for me right now, but we can show some other stuff too. So you guys have certainly seen ifs at this point. So if is generally this, and we have unum is greater than 5, do something. And this is fine. I tend to put a space before this. I don't care what you do, completely up to you. You'll notice the spaces around the operand again, where I have spaces. I highly suggest that. Kind of the choice and style with ifs is the else. And this is where I tend to find people do this all sorts of different ways. So some people like to say like else if, and then they do something here. I don't really care what you do here. I tend to, personally, I like to always open up my else block and keep its logic to itself, like this. I find this is clearer, like otherwise, and then you have a whole separate block of logic in here to do stuff, right? I just think that's clearer, completely up to you. Generally, and you see the rule following itself here, every open bracket we indent by 1 unit. Just every single time there's an open bracket, you indent below it. Every time we close a bracket, then we go back 1 indentation. That's pretty much if for me. It's not a ton there. I'm thinking you guys probably have seen 4 at this point. 4 follows very similar logic. I mean, there's not a ton of ways around doing it. And you know, we'll have a whole conversation about 4, don't worry. But it's generally initialize here, semicolon, condition here, semicolon, and then some operand there, and then you have the body, no different stuff there, right? Same as an if in terms of syntax, except for the inside of those parentheses. The only special case I can think about you guys maybe having run into so far is switch. If you've seen a switch, I'd be a little surprised if you're playing with switches already. Switch is for when an if-else logic is becoming just really ugly. You can use something called a switch. And what a switch does is it allows you to say cases. So what I'm saying is look at a num, and based on what it is, do different things. So if it's 0, we can do something. And then if it's 1, we can do another thing. And if it's 2, we can do another thing. But where syntax gets weird on this is 2 things. They have defaults, which is what happens if no condition is met. And this is a little strange for some people, they have something called a break that goes here. And then the logic actually goes inside. I believe a lot of linters, and we'll talk about a linter in a second, like switches to look like this. Why? I've always tried to figure out. It seems to be some weird linting rule in JavaScript. I tend to prefer them like this, but whatever you want to do. And by the way, if you haven't seen this before, do something goes here. That's basically how this works. We'll have a whole conversation about what the heck's going on there later, but that's kind of one of those weirder syntax things. Otherwise, JavaScript's like pretty straightforward at your guys' level. That being said, there are a lot of rules you guys won't deal with. Namely, the fact that I think we're going to get there. Every line within a block should be indented. Don't place statements on the same line as a curly brace. I tend to agree with that. What they're talking about is if we did something like, and we kind of did it with the function, but if we said like, if true, console.log, like console.log true. This looks a little weird, right? We kind of agree. Well, it'll work if you're wondering, because true is always true. But like the point being that like this doesn't look great, I don't think. Even it's saying like, what the heck are you doing? Because like it doesn't really understand why I would have 2 semicolons on the same line. That's a great question. And it'll call that unnecessary. That's like them being opinionated over at REPL IT. They shouldn't be opinionated. I know where this is going. I just remembered. We're going to have to talk about semicolons, aren't we? But not yet. Descriptive naming, we kind of talked about. Please don't be this person. You see this? Var D equals some date. They were trying to talk about a birthday, and they just called it D. I promise you, and I can give like literal examples from my company, like you just gave someone a week of work. Like this doesn't look like a big deal until it's in the middle of a 3 million line code base and someone somewhere references something called like D123 and it's like magically making everything work and you have no freaking idea what D123 is and nobody can find it and you're laughing, but some asshole did that in like half a second and completely forgot about it. And they have now screwed over a week of your work and time because they couldn't take an extra 5 seconds and name the frickin' thing. There are horror stories about this at Microsoft, if you guys haven't heard this, that the people who made like the original Windows platforms, like 98, apparently left like no documentation and had just like ridiculous variable names. And they, to this day, most people don't know this either, but unlike Mac, they don't like start a new code base for new software. They've been building off the same code base since like 95, and they still have to interact with that old code. And there are segments of the code that look like and they leave. You could look these up. It's hilarious. They leave things that are like, and nobody has been able to figure it out. I'm talking about code that's over 20 years old, like all of Microsoft, which means like all of the modern world, like banks have software with comments that say like, don't touch this. Oh, and this isn't even the whole thing. They'll say, we didn't understand how this worked. Like the people who wrote it had no idea why it was working. So you certainly aren't going to. Don't be that person. Really, like name your stuff. Commenting code. I agree. Are we not going to do it? Yeah. So I'll do it myself. Commenting code, I'm mixed about. You see me commenting. I do that while I teach because I find it's useful for you guys to like keep something there to see. Generally, commenting has a really simple rule. It's so I'll do it to you guys right now. I'll say some truth is equal to it's equal to okay, so that right there, probably none of you have any idea what the heck's going to happen if I say, like, that is real code I just wrote. Like, that's a thing. It's going to work. I know what's going to happen from it. Like, this, I would comment for you guys. You should. And that's where I'm going with my rule on commenting. And the rule is simple. Leave comments when you know someone can't understand your code without a comment, right? That's a really good rule for commenting, is you should leave them if your code isn't straightforward. My code would be, this is a ternary checking if an object is either truthy or falsy. All words you'll learn over the term of this course. But if you're wondering, it will log. Yeah, that's a thing. We could talk about that later. Fun times. That's commenting. I'm willing to have this discussion now, and that discussion is semicolons. Semicolons are a good time in JavaScript. For those who don't know this, how do I do this easily? You've probably noticed there are semicolons in JavaScript, right? Hopefully, maybe. Semicolons are technically unnecessary for you to write. So we can just say like console.log 3 and not put a semicolon, and console.log like 5 and not put a semicolon, and it's all good. It'll do that. It's not a problem. Here's why though. And this is one of those things, you're gonna hear me say this a lot over the next 2 weeks, so it's just my first warning. This is one of those things JavaScript really is strange about and screwed up, and it's not gonna apologize. And you're just gonna have to get used to it, and I'm not apologizing for it. So JavaScript was created initially to be very easy for people to understand. As such, it tries to be often overly forgiving with syntax. And I mean that. A lot of languages do not let you have, we've talked about styling our code now for like 30 minutes. A lot of languages do not let you have options about how you style your code. You have to style it one way. JavaScript tries to be as forgiving as possible. And sometimes you love it for that, because like you can write code kind of however, and it tends to run. Other times it's really confusing. Semicolons are one of those. Why are semicolons like there if they're not needed, right? It's a fair question. That's because JavaScript, under the hood, when I hit run, before it runs, the compiler runs through this code, and it goes and it finds the end of what it thinks is a statement, and it puts semicolons here. JavaScript cannot run without semicolons. What's happening is JavaScript is outthinking you. And JavaScript, when you don't put semicolons, is trying to figure out where you need semicolons. And it puts them there before it runs. That should scare you. You should want to know what your code looks like before you run it. I highly recommend using semicolons. Semicolons should be put at the end of every statement. A statement is executable. It is something that can run on its own line. Does that make sense? We'll talk more about like programming flow later, but it should come after any statement. That's the simple version of semicolons. JavaScript is putting them there for you. Technically, that makes them unnecessary, but they're not unnecessary, right? So I would just put them there for your own sanity, to remember that they're there anyway. Okay. I have a ton of things to say about this. So one, nobody wants to read your code if it's ugly. I'm just being honest. Like, nobody wants to read an ugly code base with badly named variables. That means two things. One, it's easier for another person to find and fix bug that they like looking at, and because good practices, which is what we've spent all of today talking about, well, this last part of the lecture, good practices will save you when they compound on top of each other. I'm going to try to teach you a lot of good practices over the course. The first one I'm teaching you is tidy code. If you have really tidy code and you mix it with the other good practices I'll teach, it will literally, over time, save you 50 to 70% of all bugs. I promise. If you follow good linting, that's what we're really talking about, good linting rules, you will get yourself out of a lot of trouble. Get into the habit of writing tidy code starting today. Hold yourself accountable, be consistent, make decisions about how you want your code to be styled. Check out ESLint. I'm going to load this thing up. It's going to take a minute. ESLint is what happens when you're, you guys will use it in immersive later on, but especially professionally. So for example, for me at my company, and you guys should be seeing some crazy thing load up on my screen right now. You can't get code into our code base if your code is not perfectly linted. Even if it's millions of lines long, if you do not follow, and I'm about to pull it up on you, if you do not follow all of these rules that we have specified in our configuration file, we will literally block your code from being allowed in the code base. It just gets blocked. You can't make edits to our code base unless it passes every single linting check. And if you don't see here, there are 64 lines of rules. And some of these, like this line up here that just says extends Airbnb, Airbnb is thousands of lines of rules. And we're just saying these are the additional rules on top of that. That's how crazy we are about linting. And that's how crazy basically every programmer is going to be about linting. So this isn't just a practice I'm telling you is good practice. It's a practice you need to do if you want to work in a professional code base. Because companies will have standards to how pretty code needs to be. And you will not be allowed to put code into a code base if it's not meeting those standards. The thing this offers you, though, is if you get good at like linting your code, ESLint actually has a feature called auto formatting. So if you can define clearly the consistent rules that you like in a code base, you can literally, and I could probably show it pretty quickly. I need something bigger than that. Come on. Index. Cool. My computer's running slow. I apologize. But if I start like screwing up linting, hopefully it works. It might not. Doesn't look like it, but I am also sharing screen and video right now. But if you run, like if you're running a linter, you can right click and just hit fix problems and it'll automatically apply all your rules to all your code. Super cool, super useful, definitely something you'll be setting up in the next few months. That's why it's important starting today to start defining in your head the rules that make code readable to you, right? That's what all of this is really about. How is code most readable? Do we agree? Do we agree that's also important? I put this quote here, and it's well known. I'll give you more of them. But always code as if the person who ends up maintaining your code is a violent psychopath who knows where you live. Because they might be a violent psychopath. And like, you're just getting to know me, but if I got given a terrible code base with no linting that made no sense and had bad variable names, I would absolutely, and you can do this, you can do something called annotating, which shows you who wrote what lines of code and when, and I will absolutely hunt you down on the internet and scream at you. I've done it to ex-workers at my company. Like, why would you do this? This is evil. Like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Don't do that. Don't be the person writing such bad code you make someone angry like 2 years later. You do not want to be this person. You also just shouldn't want to be that person in general, hopefully, but I don't know any of you well enough to know who you want to be. But hopefully not that. If you want someone to help debug your code, like if you somehow get me in your room to help you, make the code welcoming. Think about it like your house. If you're going to have house guests over, you probably want to tidy up. Please tidy your code up before I come over to try to help you. You don't get to work with me a ton in this class, but you do get to torture a fellow. That can be pretty frustrating for them if they show up and like your code base is a mess. That is it, actually. Okay. So we literally have like less than an hour, which I knew was going to happen, which is why I'm saying what I'm saying. So who has learn.access? Please raise your hand if you like know you have learn.access. Anybody? Wow, one person, two people, three. That's it? Nobody else knows if you have learn.access? Oh, okay. Oh, someone actually figured out how to raise their hand in participants. Hi, Chelsea. Learning Zoom real quick. Okay. So why don't you all try to go to Learn right now with me in the room? That's for starters. Learn.fullstackacademy.com and try to log in. Hopefully you have login credentials. And I am going to do a thing that opens up today's workshop for you. Okay, so like shout if you can't get in and can't figure it out. Hey Cecilia, you just can't get in. I can't hear you. Yeah.
I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go.
Oh, learn, like literally learn, and then dot, like a period, fullstackacademy.com. And hopefully you have a log. I don't know how they give you logins. I assume they sent you like an email or something of the sort. I don't know. And anybody who does know can tell you, hopefully, in the class.
I think it's the full stack login, like the website.
Okay.
I think that's what I use.
I'm looking at my Jumpstart.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So I opened up a workshop. So everybody there, you should now see a workshop called Introduction in Clean Code if you refresh the page. So that's me opening a workshop. I also want to point something else out to you guys. Do you see that like blue circle at the bottom with the question mark? Yes, no, maybe so. That is called the help desk. And the help desk is how you get a fellow to show up in your room and help you when you're having trouble. You're not going to have trouble today, I promise. But I'm just trying to show you the system so you're aware of it going forwards. How it works is if you go in there and you have a question, you see that button with like the dialog box and the pencil in it? If you click that, you can actually like write a question, right? You can say like, oh, like I'm having trouble with this and that and this. And what happens is a fellow, Nancy, who's here, will show up in the video room that I broke you off into, and she can help you with the problem. This is called the help ticket desk. It's important to mention because there's no other way to get their attention. Like you can't get their attention on Slack, you can't get their attention in Zoom. That's the only way for them to come. If you want to know why, remember that data-driven decision thing I talked about? That's how Full Stack does analytics on what you're having trouble with. They love data. That's just the honest truth if you want it. So they prefer everything go through there so they can figure out what problems you're having trouble with on like a larger basis. Okay, that's everything being said. So I want to be clear, day one tends to be really weird. I've had to speak to you for like 2 hours straight, which maybe you like, maybe you don't. This week, besides this lecture, there are 2 other double lectures, which aren't fun. Like I need to give 2 lectures in a row. So they tend to go like a little over time. This will be the only day I say this, but we're not going to come back for a review tonight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break you all into video rooms. I expect you to work as a team on this workshop. I'll break the rooms out in a second. And then tomorrow to start class, we're going to do a review. Does that make sense to everyone? So you do not have to go later than 9:40. It's a little bit of a trust system, but you're all adults. You do not have to go later than 9:40. If you agree as a pair, you can, I guess. But we'll come back tomorrow. A few things I want to say about this class that I did not mention before we like bid adieu and you guys like give this a go. It's not a very tough workshop. Generally, the structure is like, I'm telling you, starting in a few days, it's very straightforward. It's like 45-minute lecture, hour and a half-ish on the workshop, and then we, honestly, most of the time you spend with me will be reviewing the problems. We tend to spend the most time on the review portion because I find people get the most out of it, just in general. Another thing to mention is there's going to be a lot of questions that I want to answer about code, I mean, not like in general. But there's going to be a lot of questions about code that I am going to have to sadly say to you guys, like, trust me, just wait a few days because I promise we're going to come around to it. You've probably already seen me have to say that a few times. I wish I could talk about stuff like right off the bat, but hopefully you understand that we like need context for some of the answers I have to give you. I need to like build on things I'm going to teach you. So like be patient with me when I tell you we'll get there. We will. I promise we'll get there. Otherwise, I feel today went pretty well, I think. If you're still having technical issues at the end of the day, like at the end of tonight, feel free to Slack me and I'll try to get like Mel or whoever on it. And then every night, I tend to do it at night, sometimes early in the morning, you'll get a YouTube video link in the Slack channel and I'll open up the solutions to today's workshop. So you can like go back in here and there will be solutions on the left side if you want to see them. Like today, it's just literally a workshop on making clean code. So you can understand it's like not the hardest day of workshops. But going forward, that can be really useful to review before class the next day. Cool. So that's that. I'm done. I swear I'm done talking. You've heard enough of my voice. Are there any questions, concerns, comments?
I'm sorry. Maybe I missed something. How can we use Slack channel to reach?
I think you should have gotten are you in Slack already?
No.
Okay, so there should be an email in your inbox with the invitation to, it'll say like join Full Stack Academy's team or something like that, or Bootcamp Prep's team. I can't remember the subject line of it, but it'll be from Slack. It may have made it into spam, hopefully not. Once you join, you'll get immediately invited to like a channel where we're all in. And I have like a username and you could just like direct message me with anything you want.
Yeah, I see.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Oh, Vitalia, I can't really hear you. You're breaking up a little bit. Okay, no other questions? It's really ask anything. It's a good time. Okay, so I am making breakout rooms is what they're called. It's going to feel weird. Sorry. What the heck? Cancel breakout rooms. So what's going to happen is you're going to get like a prompt on your screen that's going to say like someone is inviting you to join a breakout room. When you hit OK, you and another person are just going to appear in a breakout room together. And then what you do is you're going to walk through this workshop together, follow paired programming. And what I mean is one person should be writing code on their screen while screen sharing. It's a button at the bottom of your Zoom window with like the other person for 10 minutes, or maybe you could switch off on every problem, whatever you have an easier time with. And then when you go into the next problem or 10 minutes have passed, switch, and the other person watches and the one person drives. You should be trying to correct anything. But the biggest part of today especially is probably you just like talking, right? Just having conversations about like how you want to style code, stuff like that. Today's just kind of like getting used to the platform and meeting all of you and saying hi. Does that all make sense? Are we all good? Because I'm going to click a magic button like right now and you're all going to disappear. So good night. It was great meeting you. And we're going to review tomorrow, 6:40 on the dot. I'm always here at 6:35 if you want to join a little early, if you have any questions for me or anything like that. If you're having technical issues at the end of the night, Slack me. Sound good? Okay. Good luck, everyone. Hey, Nancy, can you hear me?
Hey.
Hey. So you have a filter on for the cohort on LearnDot?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Okay, cool. So that's cool, but honestly, you probably won't get tickets tonight, but maybe you will. But I'm going to show you some other stuff real quick while I have you.
Okay.
So normally what I do is normally my lecture ends at like 7:30, almost on the dot. I'm like pretty good about it. It's just the first couple days are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So then when it comes time for this and I've broken them all out, I actually like work on content for the courses and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I'm going to do this. Look at the bottom of your Zoom window right now and just notice that whatever buttons are there, it doesn't matter. I'm not asking you to click on them. And then right now, I just made you host and there should be some new buttons.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So if you click on breakout rooms right now, you're going to see how I've like divided everybody up. And if you hit join on any of those breakout rooms, you'll just like appear with those people.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, like in a breakout room, where right now it says leave meeting on the bottom right of your screen, it will instead say leave breakout room and bring you back to this area. This is like purgatory or in like nowhere. And you can use that so you can match up help desk ticket names to the names of the people in breakout rooms and move in and out of them on a whim. That tends to be basically all you need. And then I can just like take back the host from you at any time. So my whole ask during these remote things is basically I only need you here for help tickets during the workshop. And then I come back normally at like 8:45 to 9:20, depending on how much time I need for review. I'll always tell you beforehand. And once I come back, you can just disappear again.
Yeah.
So it tends to be like an hour and a half of actual work, and I do the rest.
Okay.
That seem good?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they have different fellows for every day this week, but I'll be on Monday. But I'm gonna make sure I know who the other fellows are, so I'll make sure to relay all this information to them.
I tend to give the same starting lecture to everybody, so don't worry.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So I'm gonna turn my video off and mute for a little. I will show back up at like 9:40 just to say goodbye today.
Okay.
and hopefully you don't get help tickets, but maybe you will.
Okay.
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 I'll see you in a bit.
Bye.
Okay.